where every tale unfolds like a chat over a cozy cup of coffee. Today, I present to you an enchanting new mystery starring the ever-observant and brilliantly astute Miss Marple, the cherished amateur sleuth crafted by Agatha Christie. Settle in, and let's untangle this delightful puzzle together. And if you wish, drop a quick comment to share where you're joining from. It's always a joy to connect with our little detective community. Let's dive in Miss Marple and the clue inside. The music box the St. Mary-Me Village fed had always been a modest affair, neither too grand nor too shabby, but carrying just enough local flair to stir up a pleasing sense of occasion. The green was dotted with stalls selling everything from homemade jams to knitted scarves, and the air held the unmistakable scent of damp grass, baking scones, and overboiled tea. Miss Marple moved quietly between the tables, her gloved hands folded neatly over her handbag, her eyes drifting not with idle curiosity, but with the quiet precision of a woman who she recognized that the most captivating realities frequently lingered hidden amidst the mundane. She observed the group of church ladies murmuring softly whenever a person of stature approached too near. The butcher's wife, flushed and busy, was trying to persuade the vicar to purchase a raffle ticket, while the vicar's wife lingered close by, eager to prevent her husband from winning anything that might cause embarrassment. Miss Marple stopped by the cake stall, engaging in courteous dialogue with Mrs. Perry, whose triumphant sponge had claimed first prize for 3 consecutive years. As they conversed while Miss Marple's gaze drifted, taking in the subtle tensions that simmered beneath each courteous smile, the slight rigidity between the widow Harbottle and her niece, the strained joviality shared by 2 women who had once competed for the same man. It struck Miss Marple as the ideal day for revealing hidden truths. Yet, for reasons she couldn't articulate, a faint unease lingered at the back of her mind, as if something or someone were silently observing her. The brick stall was easily missed, tucked away between the tombola. As the children's lucky dip unfolded, Miss Marple found her attention not on the chaotic table, but on the woman standing behind it. This thin, sharp-faced spinster exuded an air of both pride and resignation, as if life had, at some juncture, left her feeling just a touch disappointed. Miss Marple's eyes roamed over the assortment: mismatched teacups, chipped figurines, and a haphazard collection of tarnished silverware. And there, half concealed beneath a faded lace doily, lay the music box. At first glance, it seemed unremarkable, crafted from plain wood, its edges worn smooth by time. In due course, a small brass key jutted from the side, while the lid displayed the faint remnants of a painted design, long faded. Miss Marple lifted it with care, her fingers gliding over the delicate layer of dust that had gathered in its grooves. It possessed a weight, a heaviness that felt disproportionate for such a tiny object. She turned the key once, and a tentative melody emerged, thin, slightly out of tune, like a memory struggling to take form. For no discernible reason, Miss Marple's heart experienced the slightest flutter. There was nothing overtly suspicious. Regarding the box, there was an unsettling quality to it that she couldn't fully articulate. The spinster at the stall observed Miss Marple with a scrutinizing gaze, her thin lips forming a semblance of a smile that felt more like a grimace. "Funny little thing, isn't it?" she remarked, her tone edged with an unnecessary sharpness. "I nearly discarded it." Miss Marple responded with a polite murmur, her fingers still tracing the worn edges of the box. "Do you know where it came from?" The woman gave a shrug, though Miss Marple noticed how her gaze flicked toward the churchyard before settling back. "Belonged to Lillian Marchmont, it did. From Asham House, though what good it ever did her, I couldn't say." Lillian Marchmont, a name that hadn't passed Miss Marple's ears in quite some time. But once spoken, it brought with it a certain chill. "She died, didn't she?" Miss Marple prompted gently. The spinster's mouth twisted, disappeared. First, the folk whispered she'd run off with some man or other, but her body turned up a month later down by the old quarry. No one ever spoke much after that. The family left the village soon after. Miss Marple's fingers tightened slightly around the box. The melody, the worn edges, the sense of something just slightly off, it all seemed to hum in the air around her. "Poor girl," Miss Marple said softly. The woman snorted. "Poor fool, more like. Got herself in trouble, they said, though if you ask me." She broke off, her gaze darting again to the Churchyard, some things are better left where they are. Miss Marple smiled politely, thanked her for the box, and moved on. Yet, the weight of the music box in her hands felt heavier than before. Later, over tea at the vicarage, Miss Marple broached the subject with the vicar's wife, a woman who prided herself on knowing every scandal, large or small, that had ever drifted through St. Mary, Maine. Such a tragedy, Miss Marple said gently, stirring her tea. The vicar's wife's eyes brightened with the particular gleam of someone who. She had a fondness for tragedy, second only to her desire to avert it within her own home. "Oh, it was dreadful," she said, leaning forward. "Such a lovely girl, too, and Ashcombe House was quite the place in those days. But there was always talk, you know, something about a suitor the family didn't approve of. And then, of course, the disappearance and that unfortunate business with the body." Miss Marple murmured sympathy, but her mind was already wandering, turning over the tune, the worn edges of the box, and the curious look in the spinster's eyes. By the time the tea was finished, Miss Marple knew one thing for certain. The music box had been meant to tell a story, and someone had tried very hard to ensure that story was never heard. That evening, in the quiet of her sitting room, Miss Marple placed the box on her table and examined it again. The scratches along the base were strangely intentional, as if someone had tampered with the wood. The melody repeated twice more, reinforcing her earlier suspicion. Some notes had been shifted, just a fraction off. She retrieved a magnifying glass, examining the edges where the lid met the base. There was a small gap, just enough to imply that the box had once opened differently. Miss Marple leaned back, her fingers gently touching the wood. A secret gift, a melody intended to convey a message, and a girl who had perished long before her tale could unfold, could be told outside the window. The village lay shrouded in darkness and stillness. Inside, the music box rested in a pool of lamplight, silent once again. Miss Marple's eyes narrowed, her mind diligently piecing together the fragments. Whatever tale this box had intended to convey, it was far from finished. Early the next morning, Miss Marple embarked on her usual stroll through the village. She paused now and then to exchange a friendly greeting or comment on the weather. Yet, her thoughts remained steadfastly on the enigmatic music box and its previous owner. Each conversation provided a small puzzle piece, yet no one appeared inclined to confront the issue head-on. Whenever she brought up Lillian Marchmont or Ashcombe House, expressions turned cautious and friendly smiles became stiff. At the post office, a bent old man reminisced about the estate's glory days but quickly redirected the conversation. By the time Miss Marple arrived at the grocer's, she had encountered evasive responses and sudden topic shifts more times than she could tally. It intrigued her how a community celebrated for its penchant for conversation could so thoroughly fall silent on this matter. One topic still lingered, her gentle manner softening a few tongues. The retired school teacher hinted at sorrow connected to Lillian's name, while a housewife muttered vague rumors of a scandal. None of it added up, yet Miss Marple sensed a shared reluctance that suggested secrets best left unspoken. She resolved to persist, quietly aware that truths long buried rarely remain so forever. Indeed, back home, Miss Marple sat down with her modest collection of village records, old clippings, and notes she had gleaned from her neighbors. The year she discovered an entry about Lillian Marchmont, portrayed as a lively young woman who mysteriously disappeared. One moment she was at Ashcombe House, and the next she had vanished. No one admitted to knowing the reason for her departure or her whereabouts. Whispers circulated, weaving tales of scandal. Some suggested she eloped with a band of traveling performers, while others speculated she was taken to a far-off convent. None of these stories seemed plausible, and there was an evident reluctance to discuss that period. Miss Marple observed how each reference ended abruptly, as if crafted by a hand hesitant to linger on painful recollections. She had witnessed such patterns previously. When a community cloaks itself in denial, the details become entwined or conveniently erased. Now, with the recent emergence of the music box, she felt that past narratives might be compelled to surface once again. Stirring her tea, she revisited the name Lillian Marchmont and pondered what mysteries that vibrant young woman might have taken with her into the abyss. A shiver ran down her spine. Late in the afternoon, Miss Marple came across an elderly farmhand resting on a low wall outside his cottage. She greeted him with politeness, and he responded with a cautious nod. As she subtly guided the conversation toward Ashcombe House, he lowered his voice. He reminisced about a distant night 4 decades prior when he was younger and still capable of managing the fields alone. He had spotted a figure lurking near the gates, a tall man with a hat pulled low. The stranger moved swiftly along the fence line, pausing whenever lights flickered in the upper windows. He recalled a chilling feeling that deterred him from taking that path again. Miss Marple listened intently, providing only gentle support. The man's face and coat color eluded his memory, but an unsettling aura surrounded him. On the night Lillian disappeared, no one else reported seeing anyone near the house, leading him to believe he had conjured it all. However, as he detailed each uncertain fragment, Miss Marple's intrigue grew. If a figure had been lurking around Ashcombe House that night, he could be the crucial link to unraveling the mystery. Unraveling the mystery of Lillian's disappearance and the silence surrounding it. Miss Marple pursued leads that took her to the local baker. His elderly mother had once toiled in the kitchens of Ashcombe House. Through a series of thoughtful inquiries and courteous exchanges, Miss Marple discovered that Lillian Marchmont was not only vivacious, but also rumored to have a forbidden romance. The specifics were elusive: a gentleman visitor seen occasionally, a solitary rose adorning the doorstep, a brief conversation caught in passing. Hushed murmurs filled the air, imply a breach of some unspoken rule. The whispers surrounding this enigmatic figure hinted at a life lived in the shadows, a stark contrast to the expectations of Lillian's father. With each passing moment, Miss Marple's intuition deepened. The music box was not just an object, but a symbol of affection, shrouded in secrecy. Yet, every inquiry she made was met with a veil of silence, as if the mere mention of Lillian's beloved was enough to stir an unspoken tension among the villagers. It was clear that this story was woven with threads of both longing and restraint. Conjure a darker truth best left forgotten. Miss Marple could practically hear the unspoken warning. Meddling with long-buried affairs often leads to unwelcome discoveries. She felt certain, however, that the truth would soon surface. Night fell with a hush, and Miss Marple retired to her small writing desk. She sifted through the scraps of information gathered throughout the day, arranging each rumor like a puzzle piece. The overall picture remained blurred, but a single notion emerged. Lillian's disappearance had not been an accident. Accident of circumstance, rather it seemed the culmination of a secret that once threatened more than her reputation. The village's reluctance to speak of the unidentifiable man at Ashcombe House, the hush surrounding a forbidden lover, all pointed to a deeper undercurrent. Miss Marple had long observed that when many people seemed determined to forget, it suggests a collective guilt or a shared wound. She tapped her pen against the page, recalling that time was a powerful ally to those who wished certain truths buried. Yet the sudden re-emergence of the music box had disturbed the village's calm, suggesting that Lillian's tale was far from over. Sealing her notes in an envelope, Miss Marple took a moment to ponder how tiny strands of gossip could unravel a fabric of silence. Although she had no evidence of wrongdoing yet, her instincts hinted that the true revelations were hidden in what remained unspoken. The morning stillness in St. Mary Me was broken by the shocking news that Mr. Tinsley, the present owner of Ashcombe House, had been discovered dead in his study. Word quickly spread. Miss Marple sat over her breakfast tray, enveloped in a shroud of hushed speculation regarding the strange circumstances surrounding the case. It appeared that when the body was found, he clutched the very music box she had recently acquired, leaving everyone puzzled about how it returned to his hands. Whispers circulated swiftly. Some argued it was a tragic burglary, citing the disarray of drawers and scattered papers, while others attributed it to a moment of despair, suggesting Mr. Tinsley had been tormented by his growing debts. Yet, Miss Marple sensed that the truth was far more intricate than mere misfortune. In her experience, objects rarely found their way back on their own, and that worn music box held more secrets than most. She noted how the local constable, disturbed by the strange scene, had tactfully kept curious onlookers at a distance, even as the villagers clamored for information. With her usual subtlety, Miss Marple conducted a discreet inquiry of her own. She suspected that Mr. Tinsley had not merely come across the music box by chance. Someone must have delivered it to him, or he had sought it out intentionally. By midday, the atmosphere in the village had turned tense. Housewives lingered in doorways, exchanging anxious whispers, while shopkeepers recounted Mr. Tinsley's last moments. Amidst it all, Miss Marple remained an attentive listener, sifting through every rumor, convinced that a more profound truth lay hidden behind this abrupt tragedy. Later in the afternoon, she made her way to Ashcombe House, where a quiet maid welcomed her, accompanied by the faint sound of muted conversations. Entering with soft courtesy, she examined the study where Mr. Tinsley had taken his final breath. A faint odor of spilled tea lingered in the air, and on the carpet lay a shattered cup, as though dropped in haste. Near the open window, the curtains billowed softly, hinting at some hurried departure or entry. She glanced at the silent desk, its drawers ransacked, sheets of paper strewn about. In place of Mr. Tinsley's usual meticulous order, there was only disarray. Yet her attention soon returned to the narrow outline on the polished floor where the body had lain. The local constable standing nearby looked uneasy. He mentioned the oddest. Mr. Tinsley's face appeared oddly serene in death, as if he had arrived at some final conclusion. Miss Marple inquired about the music box, feigning mild curiosity. The constable confessed it was in police custody now, though he couldn't grasp its significance. Miss Marple offered a faint smile, sensing that the box concealed more secrets than the scene itself. Mrs. Tinsley stood in the foyer, hands clasped tightly, her eyes dry despite her recent loss. She accepted Miss Marple's condolences with a clipped nod, offering formal words of gratitude that felt hollow. Her voice barely reached the listener. When questioned about her husband's last moments, she responded with carefully chosen words, rehearsed to the point of emotional distance. Miss Marple gently probed about the music box, and Mrs. Tinsley's lips tightened. She admitted to having no knowledge of how her husband acquired it, merely stating that she had seen him with a wooden trinket the night before. He'd been troubled by something, she remarked, pacing like a man consumed by doubt. When Miss Marple asked if Mr. Tinsley had received any unexpected news, visitors arrived, and Mrs. Tinsley hesitated. Her gaze flickered, and for a moment, her calm facade threatened to crack. Yet, she quickly recovered, reverting to bland statements about her husband's insomnia and occasional late evening calls from acquaintances. Miss Marple watched closely, noting the rigid posture and the faint tremor in her voice. It was neither sorrow nor shock that governed Mrs. Tinsley's manner, but something more guarded, perhaps relief mixed with apprehension. As Mrs. Tinsley's stiff composure slipped away, Miss Marple observed intently. She found herself engaged in conversation with the longtime housekeeper, a woman whose unwavering loyalty to Ashcombe House was nearly mythical. In hushed tones, the housekeeper confessed to having seen a figure outside the previous night, a vague shape lingering by the tall shrubs near the study window. She had considered investigating, but ultimately lost her nerve, fearing it might be a late caller with genuine business. When pressed to describe the stranger, the housekeeper hesitated, her hands twisting nervously in her apron. She had only glimpsed a silhouette, devoid of any distinct features. Observed the woman's hesitation and the subtle tremor of fear underlying her words. It appeared that the sight of an enigmatic visitor was less troubling to her than the unspoken truth she held. Miss Marple, attuned to this unexpressed tension, decided to approach her inquiries with care, aware that the housekeeper's concealed insights could be crucial. As she departed from Ashcombe House, Miss Marple crossed paths with Mr. Endicott, the local historian, who had arrived with the intention of offering comfort to Mrs. Tinsley. He was an academic type, eager to share details of his current pursuits. Investigating the estate's tumultuous history, Mr. Endicott's demeanor shifted when Miss Marple mentioned the old records and the whispers of scandal. With a conspiratorial tone, he revealed his recent explorations into archived documents concerning Lillian Marchmont and Ashcombe House's legacy. However, just days prior, he had stumbled upon the unsettling fact that entire folders had vanished. Crucial documents he relied on to reconstruct a forgotten segment of the estate's narrative were now inexplicably absent. Strangely, no one at the parish records office seemed to have any knowledge of their whereabouts. As the files vanished from sight, Miss Marple's curiosity intensified. She inquired about the contents of the missing archives, and Mr. Endicott sighed, confessing that he could only speculate. Perhaps letters or personal diaries were among them. Whatever they were, they had disappeared without a trace. To Miss Marple, this was yet another indication of someone determined to keep certain truths hidden. With the evening drawing near, she navigated through the crowd of onlookers assembled at the gate, some murmuring about the scandal that had befallen Ashcombe House. She almost encountered Mr. Croft, the antique dealer who had previously sold her the music box at the Federal. His brow shone with discomfort, as if he bore a burden too heavy to bear. He paused before speaking, eventually confessing that he had attempted to repurchase the box shortly after selling it. He provided no clear explanation, only that he had discovered something about its history that deeply unsettled him. When pressed further, he simply shifted his weight, his voice trembling as he murmured about old debts and private matters. It was evident that the music box held a significance beyond mere ornamentation in his thoughts. Miss Marple probed him softly, yet he withdrew, unwilling to provide further details. His urgent desire to reclaim the box was shrouded in mystery, leaving her with a profound sense that a more sinister reason lay beneath his distress. Observing him rush away, she felt that Mr. Tinsley's demise was merely the most recent fallout of a truth that remained unspoken, a truth that the music box continued to protect. Miss Marple sat in silence, the music box held tenderly in her hands. In her hands, she wound it slowly, as if coaxing a long-forgotten secret from its mechanism. The familiar delicate notes began to flow, and with each repetition, a faint memory stirred within her. She recalled a melody from an earlier time, a tune that had once filled her childhood with gentle wonder. Yet something was amiss. The cadence, though recognizable, carried a subtle distortion, a deliberate deviation that hinted at a hidden alteration. In that moment, her mind raced over the implications. A melody was rarely changed without reason. Purpose and such changes were rarely accidental. As these soft strains echoed in her thoughts, she felt an inexplicable pull towards uncovering the message behind those altered notes. They resonated with an undercurrent of urgency, as though trying to communicate a secret that time had nearly forgotten. In the quiet of her solitude, she allowed herself to be drawn deeper into reflection, convinced that this old tune was more than mere sound. It was a deliberate call to remember, to reveal, and ultimately to warn of a truth that someone had hoped to conceal. As the altered melody of a particular nursery rhyme, long recited in her youth, began to echo in Miss Marple's mind, the tune, though transformed, subtly bore an uncanny resemblance to a verse about a girl lost at sea, a lament that spoke of love, loss, and the inexorable pull of fate. The familiarity of the rhyme stirred an emotional response, as if the past were reaching out to bridge the gap between memory and mystery. In that recollection lay an eerie parallel to Lillian's disappearance. Tales murmured through the years, never completely unveiled. The rhythm of the verse, now woven with the altered tones of the music box, hinted at a concealed meaning, a personal tribute to heartache. Miss Marple pondered whether this very tune had been selected to commemorate a clandestine love or a premature goodbye. The echo of the verse, infused with melancholy and a hint of yearning, compelled her to delve into the profound implications of its existence. It felt as though the past, with all its veiled wounds, was gently insisting that the truth behind Lillian's fate must be heard and remembered. Listening intently, Miss Marple discerned that the alteration in the melody was not random but deliberate, a subtle reordering of notes that, when considered carefully, seemed to spell out something more than just music. The pattern of the changed notes suggested initials, perhaps even a name, hidden in the cadence like a cipher waiting to be decoded. It was as if the music box had been entrusted with a secret message, one that its creator had, intended only for those in the know to understand. The notion that such an ordinary object could conceal a secret code captivated her. In her mind, she began to weave together the possibilities. Could the notes align with a name, a date, or perhaps a location? The realization struck her that the box was not just an heirloom, but a vessel for covert communication, one that only the person who modified the melody or perhaps the intended recipient would comprehend. This thought urged her to explore the mystery further. Every note, every pause, resonated with importance, as if compelling her to unveil the identity of the mysterious writer. The truth hidden within this intricately woven musical code awaited discovery. As Miss Marple pondered the strange modifications in the music, she remembered the cautious replies and abrupt shifts in conversation whenever Lillian's name surfaced. The villagers' shared silence was not simply a gesture of courtesy. It carried a tangible burden of fear, guilt, and a longing to erase the past. Their reluctance had always struck her as more than mere reticence. It conveyed shared memories too painful to confront and truths too heavy to reveal. In the gentle hum of the changed melody, the muted voices of the village echoed softly. Each casual remark and abrupt shift in topic suggested a collective endeavor to conceal the past. Miss Marple perceived that the modified tune served as a reminder of that intentional silence, a coded lament of a community united in the effort to keep a secret buried, regardless of the price. In those final moments of contemplation, Miss Marple pondered that what had happened to Lillian was not merely an isolated tragedy, but part of a broader tapestry of denial and deliberate amnesia. The altered melody, with its hidden code and nostalgic refrain, underscored a truth too inconvenient for the village to acknowledge openly. It became clear that Lillian's fate was entwined with a collective choice, a decision to let the painful memories fade rather than confront the scandal and sorrow head. On the music box, with its carefully concealed message symbolized this shared complicity, it was a relic not only of a lost love, but also of a community's quiet agreement to forget. Yet as the final notes lingered in Miss Marple's thoughts, she resolved that some truths, however long buried, have a way of demanding to be remembered, no matter how deeply they are concealed. Miss Marple found herself quietly seated in the corner of the parish office, poring over yellowed registers and handwritten ledgers. With measured patience, she traced entries that mentioned Lillian Marchmont, a young woman whose secret engagement had been shrouded from public scrutiny. The account whispered softly of a local man of modest beginnings, a gentleman whose name rarely graced genteel discourse. Miss Marple observed the careful manner in which his name was inscribed alongside Lillian's, as if even the records sought to obscure their connection. Her gaze lingered on the faded ink and meticulous notes that suggested a romance deemed unacceptable by societal standards. In the margins, a clerk's hurried scribble hinted at a union that had elicited more than a few raised eyebrows. It was evident that Lillian's family had disapproved of the union, compelling the lovers to keep their connection concealed. As she examined the records, Miss Marple softly murmured to herself, reflecting on how sometimes the quietest unions are the most passionate, and the deepest secrets are best hidden. The act of uncovering these details seemed to awaken the past, stirring emotions and questions that had long been relegated to whispered gossip. With each page turned, the shadow of forbidden love deepened, and the significance of the music box emerged as the silent witness to that tale. A tender yet troubled liaison began to emerge from the silence of time. In subsequent conversations with village elders and longtime residents, Miss Marple gathered that Lillian's secret engagement was more than a matter of youthful indiscretion. The records were corroborated by whispered accounts. It was said that Lillian's family had vehemently opposed the match. Amid the scandal, the music box had been presented as a final bittersweet token, a parting gift from her secret lover. It was as though the delicate object had been imbued with every stolen moment of their forbidden romance. One elderly woman spoke in a tremulous tone, confiding that the box had been given on the night they were forced apart. Its gentle chimes promised a love that could never be fully realized. The music box, therefore, was not a mere relic of forgotten times, but a tangible reminder of passion and loss. Its sentimental value far outweighed its appearance, serving as a symbol of a love that defied societal expectations, yet was doomed from the start. In that revelation, Miss Marple realized that the box contained not just a cherished memento, but also the burden of a broken destiny, a destiny where Lillian's heart was caught in the conflict between obligation and longing. Turning her attention back to the source of her curiosity, Miss Marple examined the music box with fresh resolve. She remembered a time of unusual interest when she had uncovered, or perhaps merely suspected, that the box concealed more than its surface allure implied. A meticulous inspection of the base unveiled faint clues, a nearly imperceptible seam, an indentation suggesting. In a hidden nook, She had previously caught whispers of a concealed love letter nestled within its intricate design, a secret lost to the passage of time. Now, as she delicately lifted the lid and ran her fingers along its edges, Miss Marple was struck by the understanding that this compartment was crafted to conceal something cherished. Although the letter itself had long since disappeared, the very structure of the box hinted at a thoughtful intention, a protector of a message steeped in personal significance. There must have been a love letter, she murmured softly to herself. Her tone was gentle, infused with both melancholy and determination. The missing letter sparked as many inquiries as it resolved. Who had taken it, and for what reason? This enigma only strengthened her belief that the music box held the key to unraveling the fate of Lillian and the concealed realities of her heartbreaking romance. As Miss Marple pondered the absence of the letter, her mind converged on a disquieting thought. The letter had been taken intentionally, not merely misplaced by chance. She remembered that the music box had. It re-emerged in the village fair only recently, its return igniting a wave of anxious murmurs among the townsfolk. The deliberate timing hinted that someone, aware of the box's true importance, had attempted to obliterate the traces of that illicit affair. Her thoughts drifted through the ramifications. If the letter containing the lover's last words and secrets had been intentionally removed, it was evident that someone had a great deal at stake should its contents come to light. Miss Marple observed with keen focus. The removal must have taken place just prior to the Fed. The nuanced change in the box's mechanism, coupled with the lack of the once-hidden heartfelt message, indicated a clear act of intentional tampering. There is always a price for secrets, she whispered, understanding that this covert act was part of a broader attempt to alter a painful segment of history. The intentionality behind the removal heightened her suspicions and highlighted the extremes to which some would go to suppress the truth. With each new revelation, Miss Marple's conviction deepened that the tangled threads of murder, disappearance, and the music box were not mere coincidences but elements of a larger scheme. The intentional erasure of the love letter indicated a strategic effort to rewrite history, to hide a scandal that could disrupt the village's accepted story. As she assembled the shards of records, hushed whispers, and the quiet evidence of the music box, a troubling image took shape. Someone had been prepared to sacrifice truth for the sake of preserving a certain reputation. Miss Marple contemplated the notion that the murder, the long-forgotten disappearance, and even the enigmatic reappearance of the music box were all part of a grand design to keep Lillian's love and the scandal it brought with it under wraps. This deliberate attempt to reshape history, she understood, carried significant implications. It was not just about safeguarding the dignity of one family, but about upholding a shared illusion. In that moment, Miss Marple, determined to unveil not just the identities of those who had stifled Lillian's voice, but also the reasons behind their frantic endeavor to alter a history that had already taken a life. The truth, regardless of how obscured, was fated to emerge, bringing with it the true price of unacknowledged transgressions. Miss Marple meticulously crafted her invitations, each one addressed with a polite formality that masked the tension of the situation. In her calm demeanor, she extended tea invitations to the pivotal individuals, Mrs. Tinsley, whose cool demeanor concealed a disquieting calm; the housekeeper, whose steadfast loyalty often resonated more than mere words; the local historian, whose academic curiosity teetered on the edge of obsession; and the antique dealer, whose furtive glances revealed unspoken worries. Each letter was crafted with a soft insistence, a delicate nudge for them to come without raising any eyebrows. As she sent out the invitations, Miss Marple reflected that this gathering would transcend a mere social event, becoming a carefully orchestrated platform for truths to emerge. She believed that by bringing together these individuals together, the tangled threads of their secrets might begin to unravel. Her voice, when she later remarked to herself, carried a note of quiet resolve. In the meeting of those who guard secrets, even the smallest misstep will be revealed. With the invitation sent, the stage was set, and the delicate balance between polite conversation and simmering confessions began to stir in the hearts of those invited at the appointed time. Miss Marple orchestrated the gathering with an air of gentle precision. Every element was arranged to echo the bygone days of Ashcombe House, subtly evoking the ambience of long-ago tea parties and whispered reminiscences. In her understated way, she ensured that the familiar cadence of conversation, the measured clink of porcelain, and the soft hum of recollected memories would transport the attendees back to an era when the secrets of the past were still fresh over cups of well-steeped tea and slices of delicately spiced cake. Each guest found themselves drawn into a milieu where past and present converged. Miss Marple engaged them in polite conversations, meandered through the lives of former friends and bygone controversies. Her inquiries drifted softly between nostalgia and suggestion. Her comments, articulated with a blend of comfort and sharpness, encouraged each participant to ponder their own past experiences. "It is striking," she noted softly, "how even the tiniest fragments of the past can echo in the present within that meticulously crafted setting." Each spoken phrase and deliberate silence acted as a testament that history, regardless of how deeply buried, invariably leaves an imprint. Conversation drifted towards the poignant recollection of Lillian. Miss Marple reached for the music box with a serene intent. With a careful twist of the key, she set the instrument into motion, though this time she intentionally modified the familiar tune. The melody that emerged was a subtly distorted echo of what had once been a sound that seemed to convey a concealed message. With each note, her gaze scanned the gathered guests, seeking a reaction that might reveal a truth too heavy to articulate openly. Her voice, gentle yet inquisitive, interrupted in silence. "I discover that music, when altered just so, can convey profound meanings where words fail." In that instant, the modified notes appeared to act as a delicate challenge for those familiar with the original piece. Miss Marple's meticulous changes were deliberate, aimed at evoking recognition and awakening memories of a long-buried truth. Her subtle observation served as both an inquiry and a revelation, creating a tension in the room that lingered between courteous dialogue and the heaviness of an unvoiced confession amidst the gentle atmosphere. The soft hum of dialogue mingled with the delicate clinking of porcelain. One remark sliced through the tranquility like a hushed warning. As the transformed tune approached a familiar refrain, a note resonated with the gravity of its former meaning. A subtle, nearly undetectable shift enveloped one of the suspects. Despite his efforts to appear unruffled, a momentary pause in his speech betrayed him, a fleeting stumble that conveyed more than any explicit confession. Miss Marple observed the slight quiver in his voice, the way his grip on the teacup tightened, as if to steady a sudden surge of apprehension. In that moment, the carefully crafted illusion of normality cracked, revealing a hint of intimate knowledge that could only belong to someone deeply entwined with the original tune's meaning. "Interesting, isn't it?" she remarked quietly to herself, allowing the words to float in the charged silence. "How the past has a way of asserting itself when least expected." That brief glimpse of panic was enough to confirm her suspicion, a silent testament to a secret too significant to remain hidden. In the aftermath of that revealing response, Miss Marple's mind wandered to the real intention behind the changed melody. It became evident that the music box was never merely a sentimental object, nor was the absent letter the crucial hint it was thought to be. Rather, the melody had functioned as a discreet signal, a message designed for one discerning listener. As the guests returned to their muted conversations following tea, Miss Marple pondered how the alteration in the tune had been the essential element in uncovering the hidden truth. "There is something most deliberate about these notes," she murmured under her breath. Each word was laden with both revelation and regret. It was the music that had betrayed the guilty party, a secret encoded in every altered note, reserved only for the one who had committed the unspeakable act. In that realization, the mystery began to crystallize. The deliberate distraction of the missing letter was merely a ruse, while the true message lay hidden in the original melody, a private and damning testimony that only the murderer could decipher. With a steady determination, Miss Marple decided that the music would ultimately reveal the truth. She had orchestrated a private meeting with the suspect in a tranquil village parlor, where the present was poised to face the lingering shadows of the past. In a composed manner, she encouraged him to share in confidence. "I think it's time we addressed issues that have remained concealed," she initiated, her voice steady yet laced with an unmistakable authority. The suspect, caught in a web of defensiveness, with a hint of resignation, He hesitated before responding in a low, guarded tone. "I have nothing to hide, Miss Marple," he offered, though his words revealed a subtle tremor of uncertainty. Her ever-observant eyes noted every slight pause and each carefully chosen word. "Then let us speak plainly," she pressed, her measured cadence slicing through the pretense. "The facts are before us, secrets buried under years of silence and denial. We stand at the cusp of truth, and I must know, what did you do to ensure that the past remained undisturbed?" The suspect's reply faltered, as if each word bore the weight of a long-held burden. In that moment, the quiet parlor transformed into a stage for revelations, where the convergence of past and present became unavoidable. Miss Marple's calm insistence and the suspect's wavering assurances set the scene for the unraveling of a conspiracy that had festered in silence. Every spoken word, every measured silence, hinted that the storm of long-hidden truths was now gathering strength, poised to break the dam of deceit. Miss Marple's inquiry soon delved into the tangled web of Lillian's past, and she unveiled her discoveries with a calm clarity. "I have found documents that allude to a concealed engagement," she declared, her voice gentle yet firm. Lillian was secretly promised to a man whose name lingered only in hushed tales. Yet, there existed another, a rival whose influence was as unyielding as it was overlooked. Her softly spoken words bore the gravity of irrefutable proof. The clandestine love letter, intended as a last gesture of devotion, was dispatched to her genuine beloved. However, destiny had other plans, leading to a rivalry between two men who, they competed for her affection, each intent on securing a love that society deemed unacceptable. The suspect fidgeted, acutely aware that these truths delved into secrets he had desperately sought to hide. Miss Marple continued, revealing that the very item we now examine, the music box, served as a silent observer to this illicit love affair. Its presence, every note, narrates a tale of passion and treachery that has lingered in the shadows for far too long. Her steady rhythm and the firm belief in her tone allowed no escape from the truth. In that moment, the story of Lillian's lost love unfolded. A tale of two rival suitors whose secret affair had sown the seeds of discord, leading to a tragic conclusion that resonated throughout the village. Under Miss Marple's unwavering gaze, the suspect's defenses began to falter. With a heavy sigh, he admitted, "I altered the tune, Miss Marple. Many years ago, I took it upon myself to change the melody. I knew it carried a message, one meant solely for Lillian's true love." His voice trembled as he continued. "I was convinced that by meddling with it, I could suppress a truth that threatened to unravel everything. The message concealed within its original form would have laid bare the intensity of our clandestine affair, and I could not permit that secret to emerge." Miss Marple's steady questioning urged him onward. "And so you made certain that the fragile equilibrium of our history was irreparably altered." The suspect's hesitation was heavy with remorse and trepidation. "Yes," he conceded softly, "I dreaded that the truth, once exposed, would obliterate not only my reputation but also the delicate fabric of our community." His confession, measured and sorrowful, resonated with a chilling finality. The music box, once a treasured symbol of love, had transformed into an instrument of betrayal. In that admission, Miss Marple recognized the deep toll of vanity and pride in alteration made not from malice, but from a desperate wish to safeguard a tarnished honor. Yet, in doing so, he had sealed his fate. For the alteration had initiated a series of events that could not be undone. When the music box re-emerged at the Fed, its return stirred more than mere curiosity. It ignited a wave of panic so intense that it led directly to murder. Fear, as Miss Marple later observed, can drive even the most composed soul to desperate acts. In hushed tones, she recounted how the very sight of the music box had set off a chain reaction among those who understood its true significance. "I recall," she said, "how a certain gentleman's voice caught, how his hands trembled ever so slightly at the sound of the altered melody. That moment of panic was a clear signal that the past, the finality of death, had not yet settled." The suspect's admission revealed that his frantic attempt to change the melody was merely the start. As word of Mr. Tinsley's demise circulated, it became clear that an individual, gripped by the terror of being uncovered, had opted to extinguish another life, ensuring that the truths would stay concealed. The haunting echoes of that music seemed to reopen past traumas, Miss Marple observed softly. This act of killing, stemming from the fear of a long-buried scandal, had turned a symbol of affection and grief into a foreboding omen. In the shadow of death, the community, consumed by a shared need to safeguard their reputations, permitted fear to rationalize the unimaginable. This decision ignited a tragic chain reaction from which there was no escape. As the layers of deception were stripped away, Miss Marple focused on salvaging the scant honor left in Lillian's name. The truth, she stated, both gently and resolutely, must be acknowledged if we are ever to mend the scars of our history. In a measured and thoughtful manner, she shared the story of the concealed engagement, the clandestine letter, and the rivalry that had marred Lillian's legacy for years. "I have made it my mission to document every detail," she stated, her voice imbued with a calm confidence. The proof is undeniable. Lillian's honor was tarnished not by her own deeds, but by the pervasive silence that ensued. Her detailed narration of the occurrences served as both an homage to the love that was lost and a pointed admonition to those who permitted rumors and disgrace to prevail. Their actions, it must be stated that she firmly declared the honor of Lillian Marchmont has been unfairly tarnished by a community too quick to suppress scandal instead of facing it. Her words, both measured and resolute, stood as a final, unwavering proclamation of justice. In this act, she not only vindicated Lillian's name, but also revealed the subtle complicity of the village, a silent acknowledgement that beneath the facade of civility, they had all contributed to stifling a truth that longed to be liberated. That evening, alone in the stillness, in the cozy confines of her cottage, Miss Marple took a moment to reflect on the series of events that had transpired. Human flaws, she thought quietly, are as enduring as the grass, reappearing with every generation. With a contemplative air, she recalled how jealousy, pride, and fear had intertwined to create a tragic tapestry that stretched across decades. Her thoughts drifted through the complex web of secrets, each thread symbolizing a whisper of betrayal, a fleeting moment of weakness, or a choice made to safeguard one's own reputation, often at the cost of truth. It is a sobering thought, she observed, that even the most ordinary of us can become complicit in unspeakable deeds when faced with the choice between truth and silence. She allowed herself a rare moment of vulnerability as she considered the enduring impact of those choices, recognizing that the ghosts of past errors often linger long after the initial transgression. Yet she concluded quietly, it is only through acknowledging these ghosts that we may find solace and perhaps redemption. In that final contemplative moment, Miss Marple resolved that the truth, no matter how deeply buried, would always find a way to resurface. As she prepared to close another chapter in her long and winding journey of discovery, the final melody of justice echoed softly in her heart, a reminder that every hidden secret ultimately demands its reckoning. Miss Marple sat in thoughtful quiet, allowing her mind to wander over the intricate tapestry of the case. She mused that at the heart of every transgression, whether it be a betrayal of trust or a carefully concealed crime, there lay the same. Timeless emotions such as love, jealousy, and fear weave through our lives with an unwavering presence. She reflected silently, recognizing how these driving forces remain persistently unchanged over time. Each hushed secret and every tentative admission had culminated in this pivotal moment of confrontation, where history insisted on revealing itself. Memories of furtive glances, stifled sighs, and unvoiced regrets surfaced, marking the journey of events. An undeniable reality lingered beneath the surface of courteous refusals and meticulously crafted appearances, revealing the essence of humanity. Beings remain subject to the impulses of the heart, her love forbidden, her jealousy unbridled, and a fear so potent it compels one to silence even one's own conscience. She reflected, her tone both resigned and resolute. The case, with all its twists and hidden clues, was not an isolated anomaly. It was a mirror held up to the very soul of the community, a reminder that even the most refined among them were not immune to the timeless lure of scandal and secrecy. In her measured and unhurried manner, Miss Marple concluded that while the Particulars of this case might one day fade into whispered lore, yet the underlying truths of human nature would persist, echoing through generations as reliably as the toll of a distant bell. As she prepared to secure the music box for the final time, Miss Marple's careful examination revealed a subtle anomaly, a loose panel that had previously escaped notice. "Curious," she murmured, her voice low and measured. This slight imperfection suggests that there was more to this object than met the eye. She turned the box over in her hands, not out of idle curiosity intertwined with a determined quest to reveal its concealed narrative. It stood not just as an heirloom, but as a quiet witness to a tale of fervor and heartache. The panel's unevenness suggested a deliberate craftsmanship, a characteristic intended to hide a clandestine message or memento. In that solitary instant, the music box evolved from a mere artifact of yesteryears into a guardian of unspoken realities. "There is always something left unsaid," she mused softly. "Often, it is the subtle nuances that carry the deepest meaning." Her reflections lingered on. The chance that this neglected detail could be the crucial element in unraveling the mystery of Lillian's destiny, or maybe a trace of a love that had once triumphed against all challenges. With meticulous attention, she placed the box down, her thoughts already ignited by the significance of her find. In the stillness that ensued after her thorough examination, Miss Marple's insightful inquiry uncovered the reality. Concealed behind the loose panel was a small velvet pouch, and nestled within it was a fragile gold wedding ring, its inscription barely discernible. It was barely legible, Lillian's initials alongside the date of a union that never came to pass. She whispered the words, laden with the burden of unfulfilled promises. The ring, a testament to what could have been, silently conveyed a love intended to surpass the limits of time, yet hindered by circumstance. Within that solitary piece, the whole tragedy was captured, a symbol of hope shattered by societal constraints, passion restrained by duty and fear. Miss Marple observed the ring with a blend of sorrow and resolute determination. Its presence confirmed that the music box was not merely a repository of memories, but a deliberate safeguard of secrets too painful to be openly acknowledged. "This ring," she whispered to herself, "is a final testament to a life left unfulfilled, a promise betrayed by fate." The discovery left her with an indelible sense of the cost of secrets, of lives altered irrevocably by forces beyond their control. It was clear that the hidden compartment had not been an accidental design, but a deliberate measure to preserve a love story that the world had forgotten. Selected to overlook, the wedding ring, subtle and refined, embodied countless unvoiced potentials. Miss Marple mused that it represented the existence Lillian could have embraced, a life characterized by a gentle love that challenged norms, yet was ultimately thwarted by arrogance and bias. It stood as a reminder of what might have transpired. She noted softly, her voice tinged with both sorrow and longing. The ring symbolized a future unrealized, a vow once filled with optimism, now fractured by the unyielding demands of. In its gentle glow, society revealed a bittersweet echo of dreams postponed and the stark truth of a world that stifled love's growth. For Miss Marple, the ring stood as a quiet tribute, a reminder that even within the most reserved souls, hopes and desires persist, yearning for a moment to come alive. However, in the void of such chances, the specter of unrealized potential lingered, haunting those who remained. It served as a delicate yet profound emblem of the price of unvoiced sacrifices and the lasting influence of decisions taken in the past. In a poignant gesture of respect and conclusion, Miss Marple turned the key of the music box for the final time. As its sorrowful melody started to unfold, each note reverberated with the remnants of a distant time, a fragile, haunting tune that captured the essence of the enigma. "Allow this to be the concluding passage," she whispered gently, letting the music cascade like a soft blessing over everything that had occurred. With steady determination, she shut the lid, encasing within it the recollections of a case that had long awaited its resolution. The soft strains of the tune lingered, offering a poignant farewell to a love that had been lost and a past that stubbornly refused to remain buried. In that moment, the music box ceased its song, leaving Miss Marple in quiet contemplation. A blend of satisfaction for justice served mingled with a lingering melancholy for the unchangeable nature of human frailties. A case may be solved, she reflected in a low tone, but the heart forever retains its mysteries. Thus, with the final note echoing in the silence, she acknowledged that while the truth had been revealed, some wounds, however time-worn, might never fully heal. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the hidden layers of human nature and long-buried secrets. In our tale, Miss Marple's quiet determination and keen insight uncovered a world where forbidden love, jealousy, and fear conspired to silence truth for generations. The story reminds us that even in our most refined communities, the past can echo in unexpected ways, revealing that the choices we make, however quietly, shape the destiny of our collective memory. As we close this chapter, I invite you, consider the intricate dance between safeguarding those dear to us and facing harsh realities. Imagine uncovering a secret so significant that it could transform everything. Would you opt to keep it hidden, or would you reveal it for the sake of justice? This enigmatic question remains. How far would you be willing to go to protect a concealed truth, even if it risked changing the trajectory of history? I invite you to share your insights and theories in the comments below. Let's engage in a discussion. Do you think certain secrets should remain undisclosed? Is it better to leave certain things buried, or does the truth always seek to emerge? Your thoughts are not just appreciated. They are crucial for enriching the dialogue surrounding the price of silence and the strength of revelation. If this narrative resonated with you, consider subscribing for more captivating mysteries and sharing this video with those who enjoy a well-crafted enigma. Thank you for being a part of our community, and I eagerly anticipate uncovering more secrets with you in our next journey.